Glad to have you along. As always, we are joined by Greg Engert, Beer Director for the Neighborhood Restaurant Group, which includes such places as where we are once again, Church Key, downstairs, Birch and Barley, also the Evening Star Cafe and Planet Wine. Greg, a Sommelier of the Year from Food and Wine, a James Beard Award nominee. Also, what's on tap this week?
So this week we are doing a beer from St. Somewhere Brewing Company. It's called Saison Athene. And I love this beer. I've loved it for a long time. But the reason I wanted to talk about it today is because I was just down a few weeks ago in Florida, in Tampa Bay, with my brewer, Megan Parisi, who's going to be the brewmaster at the upcoming restaurant and brewery down by Nationals Park of the Neighborhood Restaurant Group. It's called Blue Jacket. And we are actually down there brewing our first ever beer. It's a collaboration beer with Cigar City Brewing Company, which makes great things. They're great friends of ours. And then a little teeny tiny nano brewery from Boca Raton, Florida called Funky Buddha, which makes crazy beers too. Oh no, it's awesome. Really cool stuff. And so we went down there, and the great thing is we have this amazing event in DC annually called Savor, which is the food and beer experience. And here at Church Key and Birch and Barley, we do giant events every single night of the week leading up to it. So the Thursday night before Savor, which I think is the second weekend in June, if I'm not mistaken, we are going to be debuting that very beer, which I can't say anything more about what it is or the name or anything, but the beer that we brewed together, we're going to debut along with a host of Cigar City beers and Funky Buddha beers, beers that you cannot get in DC. The reason, this is a circuitous way to get to why we're drinking Saison Athene here, but while we were brewing this beer, Bob Sylvester, who is the one-man show behind St. Somewhere Brewing Company, just kind of showed up at the brewery, hangs out there a lot because his brewery is located in Tarpon Springs, about an hour north of Tampa. So he just kind of showed up, and I'd never met him, and I'd known all about him. I've been selling his beer for years. I love his beers. And so I got to hang out with him while we were brewing, and then we all went to dinner afterwards, and he's just like an amazing guy, another guy who's just doing it because he wants to make delicious beers he loves. He's not trying to get big. He's not trying to market the beers, just making what he wants to make and hoping people like to drink it, and we do. He makes the equivalent of under 1,000 kegs a year in beer, which is teeny tiny. Most brew pubs are going to make three times that. So really small production.
That many.
Yeah, exactly, right. Really small production. And all of his beers are based on the Belgian farmhouse tradition, kind of traditional saison ales. And he likes to use spices in each of the beers, but he also likes to spike the beers with Brettanomyces, which is something we've been talking about. And he puts this, up until recently he was adding this to the bottle, but now he doesn't even have to, because this little teeny tiny brewery that he built on his own from old dairy equipment has been literally positively inoculated with Brettanomyces. He used it so much that it's just all over the brew house now, and it gets into all the beers that he actually makes, so he doesn't even have to add it anymore. He's got this kind of house wild yeast that just gets into all the beers and gives these beers amazing flavors, particularly as they age. So
gorgeous color.
Yeah, beautiful. Now, this is one of those ones that has got some age on it, and so it's lost some of its carbonation.
I was going to ask, the head disappeared.
The head's
right away.
dissipated, but that Brettanomyces has continued to work in the bottle, and so this is it's very funky. It's got more acidity than you'd expect, and that's why the effervescence isn't as necessary, because the sweetness of the beer is kind of lifted up by the acidity here rather than the CO2.
That is dynamite.
It's awesome.
And like you were saying, but still a real great grab on your tongue.
Oh yeah, it's pretty taut. Yeah.
I mean, even though the head might have disappeared, not flat by any means.
No, it's not. Exactly. The head's gone, but it's still got a lot of CO2 in solution. And what's cool about this beer is that, fermented with a farmhouse ale yeast first, and then the Brett character comes in, the funky, rustic, grassy, earthy qualities, a little bit leathery, a little bit of citric fruit, a little acidity. But he's also brewing this beer with spices. And that is the old tradition of continental Europe, really, which we know as gruit. And gruit is Old German for wild herbs. So before hops became really pertinent in the 14th, 15th century, they were adding all sorts of weird kind of wild herbs and spices to season and preserve their beers. These are things like bog myrtle, yarrow, stuff that we don't see really anymore at all. And then as spice trades kind of grew, and more and more things came in for cooking and stuff like that, you see the addition of things like rosemary, in this case chamomile flowers actually, and a host of other things. And this actually has black pepper in it as well. So cool seasoning, just like cooking, nothing is overwhelming. Everything is well integrated.
And for those of us thinking about a career change and buying or building or creating a brewery this side, I mean, seriously, I mean, if you were interested in making that same amount that he does, you just want to make beer you enjoy. Obviously, you need to pay the electricity bill,
right,
but you're not worried about getting big or trying to become a billionaire. How much space do you need? I mean, and I'm not an expert on the equipment, but you've got fairly big, mash tuns and things that are pretty big. How much space do you need?
Well, he's using a 7-barrel system, which means that he can produce about 14 kegs at a time, from just that system. Maybe a little bit less, obviously, like 12 kegs at a time. So, that's not a big imprint. No, I mean, you could put his brewery in the front section here of Church Key, no problem. And that is the thing. He actually retired. He was in retail for 30 years, and he just decided he was a huge beer geek. And about 5 years ago or so, he just said, you know what, I'm going to do this. And so, he invested his savings into this brew house. Literally, it's cobbled together from like old stainless steel from dairy equipment. The fermenters are completely open topped. He can lid them if he wants, but it's natural, like farmhouse brewing in an industrial park. You know what I mean?
Keep an eye on the cat.
Right, exactly. But we're actually, when I was down there, I was telling him I really do love his beer so much. So he's on board to do a collaboration with us at some point as well. Once we open the brewery, hopefully early 2013, he'll come up and together with myself and Megan Parisi, we'll make a collaboration, Saint Somewhere Blue Jacket beer, and hopefully do some kind of an event at Birch and Barley in Church Key as well. Okay,
let's talk about Blue Jacket again in a second, but first, what would you pair this with?
This is something that's going to go with lots and lots of things. I think that it's racy enough on the palate, it's got enough acidity that it's going to be great with funky things as well, bigger things as well as milder things. So, just because it's pale in color doesn't mean that it only goes with pork and chicken. I think this could handle some great spicy preparations. I don't know why, but right now I'm thinking like Indian food, like lamb vindaloo, and things that are spicy, hot, but would really meld nicely with the black pepper notes we have here.
Paella,
exactly. Yeah. Okay. I think that would be wonderful with that kind of stuff.
Okay, and so Blue Jacket, you said, was going to open in early 2013. Again, it's down by Nationals Park. I've got a friend who manages an apartment building right across the small street.
Cool.
Looks like construction is coming along. And this is the first venture of its type for you guys. You're not making your own beer anywhere else.
No, not at all. And what's cool about it is so often, the whole brew pub mentality is from brewers who want to make beer and are looking for an outlet for their beer, don't really know food or restaurants that well. So I think
easier than it looks.
Yeah, right? It is. And so I think we're in a cool position because we know that other side. We know the restaurant.
Harder than it looks. I'm sorry. Harder than it looks.
That depends on who you ask. But I think it's funny because we're on the other side. We know restaurants, we know service, we know food, and we know some about beer as well. But now I'm not a brewer, so we bring in this wonderful brewer, Megan Parisi. She was at Cambridge Brewing Company for the past 7 or 8 years, lead brewer for the last 5. She moved down here. She's going to be our brewer, and so she's going to give us that. And I think the thing we have to remember is we're not doing a brew pub. We're doing a restaurant, a bar, and a brewery. We're going to be selling, other beers on site. It's going to be a great beer bar as well. It's going to be lots of Blue Jacket, but other really cool things, bottles, drafts. We're going to have cask ale, of course. And also you're going to be able to find Blue Jacket all over town. We're going to be distributing outside of the brewery as well, hopefully into Northern Virginia pretty soon as well.
I'll go to the game in the 7th inning.
Right, exactly.
All right,
exactly.
We'll definitely be doing some reports from there down the road. Greg, thanks as always.
My pleasure.
I'm Brennan Haselton. Please do always drink responsibly and bring your thirst next time for another Beer of the Week.
In the